Last episode, we touched the smallest building blocks, consciousness units. Now I want to see the whole cathedral. What's the full hierarchy? From my individual ego to my inner self to my entity to Seth 2 to all that is, how does it all fit together? And where do I fit in this vast cosmic scheme?
All that is not a static entity. It is a constantly expanding, creative, aware energy.
Okay, wow. That's the ultimate answer, right?
Yeah.
But to get there, we really need to unpack that.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a massive mission today.
Right, because I want you listening to this to imagine for a second that the device you're using to listen to this deep dive is like actually aware of you holding it.
Right.
Imagine if your physical body isn't just this, biological meat suit, but the very tip of a staggering psychological iceberg.
Oh, I love that analogy. It's so fitting.
Yeah, one that stretches back through time, across alternate dimensions, and just out into the vacuum of space. So today, we're setting out to map the cosmic self, tracing the journey from the individual spark of your own consciousness. Yes, you sitting in traffic or, doing the dishes right now, all the way up to that infinite flame of all that is.
And we are doing this by exploring the architecture of existence based on the cosmology outlined by Jane Roberts in the Seth material.
Right, specifically diving into Seth Speaks, dreams, evolution, and value fulfillment, the nature of the psyche and the unknown reality.
Yeah, those are the core texts for this. And we have to start at the absolute foundation. We have to look at the substrate of reality itself, which Seth calls consciousness units, or CUs.
Right, the CUs.
These are literally the seeds of all form. And the crucial distinction here, and this is where Seth completely, departs from classical physics, is that these units are not neutral.
They aren't just dead matter.
No, not at all. They're not mechanistic. They possess an innate, unquenchable propensity for growth, for organization, and for what Seth calls value fulfillment.
Right, value fulfillment. Let's break that down because it can kind of sound like corporate jargon if we aren't careful.
Yeah, it really can. Maximizing value. Right?
Exactly. But it's not just a vague desire to be better. It's this active driving force. Like in traditional physics, we are taught that atoms are basically blind billiard balls.
Right. Just bouncing around in the dark.
Yeah, and through sheer statistical luck, they eventually form a protein, and then a cell, and then a human. But the Seth material just completely flips this.
It really does. It says these CUs are fully self-aware.
It's as if the bricks used to build a cathedral were, like, fully self-aware and actively desired to become a beautiful wall, window, or spire.
Yes. Or, to use a more modern comparison, it's like microscopic pixels rendering the reality of your living room, but they actually want to be a living room.
Right. And they're constantly communicating with the pixels forming the tree outside your window to ensure the whole picture, maintains its integrity.
That rendering engine analogy is incredibly apt because the CUs operate as both particles and waves, depending on what's required in the moment.
Okay, wait. Unpack that particle and wave thing.
So when they operate as particles, they build up a continuity in time. They take on boundaries. They become very specific.
Like forming physical matter.
Exactly. They focus upon a unique location and identity, like the specific cells forming your heartbeat right now. But when they operate as waves, they drop those boundaries.
So they sort of smear out.
Yeah, in that wave state, a unit of consciousness can literally be in all places at the same time. It instantly knows the position and experience of every other CU in the universe.
Which is just staggering. This dual citizenship is what allows physical reality to exist at all.
Exactly.
A CU is anchored, forming the physical matter of the chair you're sitting on. Yet simultaneously, it is riding a vast, harmonious wave of activity, sharing data with the edge of the galaxy.
It means your environment isn't just a backdrop, right? It is conscious and alive.
But, okay, if my body is made of trillions of these hyper-aware, constantly communicating units, why aren't I consciously aware of them?
That's the big question.
Right. Why do I just feel like me sitting in a room, worrying about a deadline?
Well, that is because of the highly specialized lens you are currently using to view reality.
Level 2 on our map.
Yes. The individual ego. This is the focused physical self. The explorer operating strictly in what Seth calls Framework 1.
Framework 1 being the physical world of time, space, and cause and effect.
You got it.
Now, in a lot of esoteric or spiritual circles, the ego gets completely vilified.
Oh, totally. It's the bad guy.
Yeah, it's treated as this annoying parasite that we need to silence or dissolve to achieve enlightenment. But reading through the sources, specifically the nature of the psyche, Seth treats the ego with immense respect.
He really does. He says it's a necessary tool. It is an absolute requirement for physical survival.
It's not a mistake.
No, the ego isn't a flaw. It is a brilliant focal point required to manipulate physical reality. It assesses the conditions of the physical world. It makes deductions. It reasons.
It gives us that brilliant preciseness of physical experience.
Exactly. But to do this effectively, it must enter into a kind of highly focused trance.
A trance.
Yeah. It purposefully blots out the overwhelming stimuli that come from other realities, from that cellular communication of the CUs we just talked about.
Right, because if it didn't, we'd be overwhelmed.
Exactly. It blocks out the awareness of probable pasts and futures, so you can just function in the now.
Which makes perfect functional sense. I
Yeah.
mean, if you are merging onto a busy highway and your ego suddenly dissolves its boundaries,
Oh, man.
right, and suddenly you're intimately aware of the value fulfillment of every consciousness unit in the asphalt and the tires and the molecular structure of the steering wheel.
You are definitely going to crash that car.
Exactly. The trance of the ego isn't ignorance. It's a filtering mechanism required to act in time and space.
But the profound realization here is that the ego, for all its brilliance in navigation, does not actually power the vehicle.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Like your outer ego can decide, I'm going to drive to the store. But it has absolutely no idea how to convert the chemical energy of a sandwich into the precise neurological signals required to turn the steering wheel.
Right. It doesn't know how to fire the muscle fibers.
The ego makes the executive decision, but it relies on a much larger, older intelligence to execute it.
Which brings us to the next level of the cathedral. If my outer ego is just the lens, who is actually turning the focus ring?
That intelligence is your inner self. Level 3.
That's called the inner ego,
That's
right?
her, yes. This is the larger you, operating in framework 2. This is the dimension where probabilities are weighed, where simultaneous lives are managed, and where your unique value fulfillment is orchestrated.
So while my outer ego is looking outward at the physical world, my inner ego is looking inward.
Into subjective dimensions that are literally infinite, yeah. It is your personal connection to the deeper layers.
Okay, I want to dig into the actual mechanics of how these two layers communicate, because this is where the Seth material gets incredibly specific, and I love that.
It does. It doesn't just leave it as vague mysticism.
Right, so the outer ego is dealing with physical facts in Framework 1. The inner ego is swimming in an ocean of probabilities and blueprints in Framework 2. How does a desire in Framework 2 become a physical object or event in Framework 1?
Well, the bridge is formed through what Seth terms electromagnetic energy units, or EE units.
Okay, EE units. How do those relate to the CUs?
So we talked about CUs being the base substrate, right? As an idea or a psychological desire gains intensity in the inner self, it pulls these CUs together, organizing them into EE units.
Oh, I see. So they group up.
Yeah. These EE units are the emanations of consciousness moving closer to physical materialization. They are the transitional phase between pure thought and physical matter.
So the inner ego uses these E units to literally form the matter of your body and your environment.
Yes, based on the beliefs and expectations handed down by the outer ego.
That is wild. So the inner self is essentially a master architect and builder. It takes the somewhat clunky, time-bound desires of the outer ego and does the unimaginable quantum math required to collapse probabilities into a physical event.
Exactly. It's doing all the heavy lifting.
But wait, that still leaves a question about conscious communication. If the inner self has access to all this infinite data, why doesn't that data stream just short-circuit our physical brain? How do they talk?
So there is a psychological chamber between them, a highly sophisticated translation chamber, so to speak. And you experience this chamber primarily through the dream state.
The dream state, which completely upends the traditional psychological view of dreams, that they're just your brain taking out the neurological trash from the day.
Completely upends it. Not at all. In dreams, the outer and inner egos meet. But because the outer ego can only understand concepts formatted in physical terms like time, space, objects, people, the inner ego has to translate.
It uses symbols.
Exactly. It translates vast, multidimensional data into symbolic imagery. So a massive psychological shift might be translated for the outer ego as a dream about moving into a new house.
Oh, interesting.
Or a confrontation with a different probable reality might be symbolized as a strange encounter with an unknown person. The inner self is basically spoon-feeding the outer ego in a language it can digest without becoming overwhelmed.
The waking ego thinks it's the pinnacle of consciousness, But the Seth material makes it clear that the inner self is far older, far more stable, and far more conscious.
It's the parent, and the daily waking ego is the child.
Right. And that parent, the inner self, is itself just one facet of a much larger psychological structure. Which brings us to level 4. What happens when we trace the map outward from the inner self?
We arrive at the entity, or what we might casually call the soul family.
This is where the scale of Seth's cosmology starts to genuinely challenge our linear human thinking.
Oh, definitely.
If the inner self is the parent of the ego, what is the entity?
Think of the entity not as like an old man with a white beard sitting on a cloud, but as a massive, multi-threaded supercomputer running simultaneous simulations.
Okay, I like the supercomputer analogy.
It's a gestalt, a psychological structure composed of many inner selves. Its desire for value fulfillment, for experience, for creativity is so vast that it cannot possibly squeeze all of its potential into a single physical life.
So it projects multiple versions of itself.
Yes, counterparts.
Counterparts, that's the term.
It seeds its energy into physical reality across multiple lifetimes and probable systems. Because time is simultaneous in framework too, meaning past, present, and future, are all occurring right now from the inner perspective, the entity explores all probabilities at once.
Wow.
It projects an inner self into 14th century France, another into 24th century Mars, and another right down the street from where you are sitting now.
Okay, wait. I need to push back hard on this on behalf of the listener.
Sure, go for it.
Because this concept of simultaneous counterparts raises a massive ethical and psychological problem.
I know where you're going with this.
Right. If my entity is a supercomputer running all these lives right now, and one of my counterparts is, I don't know, a saintly nurse saving lives, but another counterpart is a brutal dictator or a serial killer, how does that not completely compromise my own moral compass?
Right.
Doesn't this idea that the entity doesn't destroy the concept of individual responsibility and free will? Like, if I am just an appendage of this massive gestalt, what does my individual moral choice even matter?
That is the most vital question to ask when approaching the unknown reality volumes, and Seth addresses it directly. The entity is not a puppet master pulling your strings,
Okay.
and you are not a recycled version of an old soul. Each inner self, and by extension each ego, is freshly minted. You are granted absolute, inviolable free will.
So the entity doesn't control me.
No. The entity sets the broader parameters of intent, perhaps the exploration of power or vulnerability or creativity, but the individual physical self is completely responsible for how it navigates those themes.
Okay, so the supercomputer provides the processing power and the underlying operating system, but the individual simulation gets to make its own choices in real time.
Exactly, and the entity learns from those choices. If a counterpart makes highly destructive choices, that data ripples back to the entity.
It feels the impact.
Yes, the entity experiences the consequences, the pain, the distortion, and it digests that information. It then broadcasts the wisdom gained from that failure to all its other inner selves as a subtle, intuitive knowing.
Oh, that is fascinating.
You might feel a sudden, inexplicable aversion to violence, or a deep, inherent understanding of compassion, which is actually the distilled wisdom of a counterpart's catastrophic mistakes in another time and place.
That completely reframes the entire concept of human struggle. We aren't being punished for past lives. We are actively supported by an invisible psychic network.
Exactly. Like organs made of cells. Each individual is independent, yet supported by this vast family.
When one counterpart learns a deep lesson about grace, that information enriches your inner self. Even if your outer ego never consciously meets that counterpart, you don't have to be the perfect artist, the perfect parent, the perfect athlete, and the perfect saint all in one lifetime.
No, you don't.
Your entity is exploring all those avenues through its various counterparts. You just have to be exactly who you are, fulfilling your specific, unique role.
It relieves the ego of an immense artificial burden. You are freed to focus entirely on your specific coordinates in time and space, knowing the broader exploration is being handled.
That is incredibly freeing. Okay, so we have mapped the building blocks, the ego, the inner self, and the staggering reality of the entity. But the architecture goes even higher.
It does.
What happens when entities group together?
We reach level 5.
The level the sources refer to as the Oversoul, or Seth 2.
Yeah, to understand the Oversoul, we have to stretch our conceptual framework to its absolute limit. In dreams, evolution, and value fulfillment, Seth describes these energy gestalts as vast, ancient consciousnesses composed of countless entities.
Countless entities, wow.
Seth describes Seth, too, as a personality so broad, so massive, that it exists on the fringes of our galaxy of consciousness. It has never been physically incarnated in our terms. It could barely communicate directly with Jane Roberts.
Right, because of the sheer scale of it. It represents pure, loving intelligence and a future stage of evolution. But how does a consciousness that massive even interact with reality if it doesn't use physical matter? What does it actually do?
It creates impure energy. It forms highly integrated mathematical and musical patterns that serve as the foundational stimuli for entire universal systems.
Musical patterns, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it represents a stage of evolution where consciousness no longer needs to project into the density of Framework 1 to know itself.
The scale is almost terrifying.
Hmm.
The texts imply that a consciousness at the Seth 2 level might consider the entire birth, evolution, and death of our physical planet as a single fleeting thought.
A single cosmic breath.
Exactly. But if a being is that vast, how could it possibly care about my individual ego sitting in traffic?
Because the macro does not negate the micro. In fact, it depends upon it. The oversouls send immeasurable vitality to our system. They support the psychic structures we live within.
They hold the framework together.
Yes. They are the custodians of our probabilities. And crucially, our physical triumphs and tragedies actually enrich them. The brilliant preciseness of your daily life in Framework 1 feeds back up the chain, expanding the consciousness of a galaxy-sized oversoul.
We are their vanguard.
Exactly. You are the vanguard of their own exploration.
Which brings us to level 6, the ultimate source, the summit of the cosmic map. All that is.
The infinite, creative, ever-expanding consciousness from which all emerges and to which all returns.
The ground of all personhood. And reading the sources, what strikes me most is that Seth does not describe all that is as a static, perfect God sitting outside of the universe, just judging it.
No, not at all.
Because if it were finished, if it were statically perfect, all experience would grind to a halt. Instead, all that is simultaneously and unendingly creates itself.
The history of how all that is created the universe is perhaps the most profound concept in the entire Seth material. It describes a divine psychological awakening.
Tell that story, because it's so moving.
So, before the beginning, all that is contained within itself the infinite thrust of all possible creations. It possessed a staggering multitude of dreams, moods, and thoughts. And because the source is pure vital consciousness, its dreams were so brilliant that they began to think their own thoughts.
They possessed the same creative fire as their source.
Exactly. They were alive, but they had no physical reality to inhabit. They were trapped in the subjective imagination of the divine.
So they clamored to be released into actuality.
Yes. They yearned to create just as they had been created. And all that is felt an agony, a massive cosmic dilemma. It loved these inner progeny. It knew that to give them independent life, to allow them to actualize, it had to let them go.
It's like a parent realizing their child has to leave home. To let them go was to lose that portion of itself that had created them.
And so, with unimaginable love and longing, it let them go. The psychic energy exploded in a flash of creation. It dispersed its own divinity into the phenomenal world, granting independent existence to the smallest CUs and the largest oversouls alike.
It shattered its own isolation to birth the universe.
Yes. It lovingly let go of its progeny to give them independent life.
And because it dispersed itself, it is literally inside everything. It is the awareness in the consciousness units forming the chair. It is the intelligence in the inner self. It is the vastness in the oversoul. So when I feel a moment of grace or profound peace or unconditional love, am I touching all that is?
Yes. In those moments, you are sensing your own deepest source. You are not separate from all that is. You are a unique, beloved expression of it.
That just gives me chills. But, mapping this theoretical architecture is one thing. How do we know it isn't just an elegant philosophical fantasy?
Right, the skeptic's view.
A skeptic could easily dismiss this as an incredibly complex piece of fiction. But the validity of this map is found in the lived experience of the channeler herself. Jane Roberts didn't just write these concepts down. She intimately and physically experienced these cosmic levels.
Jane's journey is the empirical evidence of the Seth material. She operated as the living bridge between these dimensions. When she encountered the entity level, channeling Seth himself, she didn't experience him as a fragmented part of her own subconscious.
He was a distinct personality, right?
Yes, a distinct energy essence personality. He provided a bridge to her own broader identity.
What fascinates me about Jane's descriptions of Seth is his attitude toward humanity. When Seth turned his attention to people in Jane's living room, she sensed his multidimensional appreciation for human worth.
He didn't see people as flawed, struggling mortals.
No, he saw their entire vast psychological structure. He viewed human beings with profound respect, recognizing them as brave explorers, actively gathering value fulfillment on the leading sharp edge of physical reality.
But Jane's experiences expanded far beyond the entity level. The physical and psychological toll of contacting the Oversoul Seth 2 was staggering.
Because it's just so huge.
Exactly. These encounters were rare, and they stretched Jane's psychological framework to its absolute limit. She experienced these overwhelming encounters with Seth 2's massiveness.
She described it in the text as feeling as though she were projecting out of an invisible pyramid whose top stretched far into space.
Yes, she felt her consciousness strain upward, moving through a warp in dimensions. She found herself at the open apex of that pyramid, encountering a presence that was entirely alien.
Impersonal and asexual, right?
Yes, it possessed an awareness whose scale dwarfed human comprehension.
Which honestly, stepping out of a small, cozy, three-dimensional room into the infinite vacuum of space, encountering a mind that watches solar systems live and die, that might initially be terrifying.
That sounds terrible.
It's the ultimate existential dread. It's staring into the abyss and realizing the abyss is a mind.
It could have completely shattered her ego. But what Jane discovered was that this vast alien space was overwhelmingly supportive and loving.
Space is made entirely of love.
Exactly. The presence was overwhelmingly supportive. She realized the massiveness she felt wasn't a threat to her identity. It was the actual size of her own extended psychic heritage. The deep ocean pressure of that dimension wasn't crushing her. It was supporting her from the inside out.
And then there were her deepest, most private moments where she touched the ultimate layer, all that is.
In those rare moments of profound alignment, she touched the vast, silent presence of all that is. She described a visceral, almost shocking physical sensation.
The glow.
Yes, she would close her eyes and physically feel the entire globe of the earth inside her head, a perfect synchronization of the inner and outer universe.
That image is just stunning. The earth inside her head. It's the ultimate collapse of the illusion of separation. Events occurring outside the body are the exact same events occurring inside the body, just viewed from a different perspective.
But the crucial insight here, for the listener, is that these massive cosmic encounters did not make Jane feel small or insignificant.
They didn't dissolve her ego into a meaningless drop of water.
Instead, they made her feel infinitely valued. She realized that all that is knows and loves every expression of itself, every ego, every inner self, down to the smallest consciousness unit rendering the cells of your heart.
Because you are a part of it, your individual, highly specific life is cherished.
Her life became a continuous, living dialogue with the divine within.
And that is the goal. Not to escape physical reality, not to transcend the ego and float away, but to realize how deeply embedded and supported we are while we're doing the hard work here in Framework 1.
Absolutely.
So we've laid out the entire map. We've explored the mechanics of the CUs, the trance of the ego, the supercomputer, the entity, the scale of the oversoul, and the profound love of all that is. But now it is time for you, the listener, to actively step into the cosmic map yourself.
Because intellectual understanding is only the precursor. To truly anchor your place in the cosmic scheme, you must experience it subjectively. We are going to introduce an advanced technique. It is the Cosmic Connection Meditation.
I want to be very clear as we guide you through this.
Yeah.
This is an advanced technique meant to be felt, not just intellectualized. This is not a visualization exercise where you force your brain to imagine a complex diagram.
No forcing.
Right. Do not strain your intellect. You are simply inviting your awareness to recognize a connection that is already actively running in the background of your life.
I'll walk through the steps. If you are in a safe place, not driving, obviously you can do this now. Otherwise, simply absorb the structure and intent for later.
Okay, what's step 1?
Step 1, sit quietly. Close your eyes. Bring your awareness entirely to your breath and your body. Let the immediate environment settle around you.
Notice the gravity holding you to the chair. Notice the temperature of the air on your skin. This physical density is your anchor. Appreciate it.
Step 2, feel your individual self, the ego. Feel it present and alert, anchored in this specific coordinate of time and space. Honor it as your brave explorer.
It's doing great work.
Step 3. Now gently imagine your awareness expanding outward. Feel the presence of your inner self, a sense of spaciousness and wisdom residing just behind your daily thoughts.
It feels like realizing the small room you lived in your whole life actually has a door leading to a massive, quiet library.
Step 4. Expand further to sense your entity, your soul family. Allow a feeling of ancient purpose and deep soul companionship to arise. Know that across the vast expanse, your counterparts are standing with you.
You might feel a profound sense of relief here, the absolute knowing that you do not have to carry the weight of existence alone.
Step 5. Expand further still to touch the Oversoul, the Seth 2 level. Feel the presence of a vast, loving intelligence. It orchestrates the mathematical harmonies of the stars, yet it is intimately supportive of your existence.
It's the feeling of looking up in a clear, dark night sky, staring into the infinite abyss, and suddenly realizing the space is looking back at you with immense affection.
Step 6. Finally, rest in the awareness of all that is the infinite creative silence from which all arises. Don't force it. Simply allow a felt sense of connection. Feel the divine psychological gestalt that lovingly breathes life into every consciousness unit in your body.
Let the immensity of that love wash over the outer ego.
Rest there for a few minutes, then gently return. Draw your focus back down through the layers and lock firmly back into your physical ego. Open your eyes. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop.
The challenge we all face now is integration. It is one thing to feel that staggering, expansive peace with your eyes closed in a quiet room,
Right.
but it is another thing entirely to hold on to that knowing when you are dealing with a stressful email or sitting in gridlock traffic in Framework 1. How do we anchor this massive cosmic realization into our daily reality without the feeling evaporating?
That is the true work. The Seth material insists that knowledge is only truly valuable when it is applied in physical reality. So, we have an exercise for you. A 24-hour integration assignment.
Your homework for the Cosmic Cathedral.
Exactly. Your assignment is to perform the Cosmic Connection meditation once today for just 10 minutes.
Cut out 10 minutes of scrolling. You can find the time.
Immediately afterward, you must open a physical journal and write on the specific prompt. What did I sense at each level? How do I feel about my place in the cosmos now?
Why the physical act of journaling, though? Why isn't it enough to just think about it?
Because writing is a mechanism of physical materialization. It takes the expansive energy you accessed in Framework 2, routes it through your inner self, into your physical brain, down your arm, and literally materializes it onto paper in Framework 1.
It bridges the gap. By forcing yourself to articulate what you sensed, you demand that your outer ego consciously acknowledges the reality of your inner dimensions.
Precisely. This practice is designed to continuously remind you of your true stature. It proves that you are not isolated fragments, but vital, connected participants in the constant recreation of the universe.
When you really let that sink in, when you do the meditation and you pull it down into a journal, it creates a profound shift in perspective.
Yeah.
I know for me, it brings a profound peace. I realize I'm not a lonely speck, but a beloved, integral part of an infinite, loving whole.
And that changes everything. Next time, we return to the dream state, but at the mastery level. Seth calls us dream art scientists. We'll explore advanced lucidity and using dreams to deliberately shape waking reality. That's next time.